Now let's talk a little bit about user experience research. When implementing a piece of code or designing an interface, it can be tempting for the developer to make the product for a type of user which is exactly like them. However, people vary greatly in their approach to the use of a product, in their expectations, and in their needs. It is very important for a developer or a designer to research who the users of the product will be, as well as what needs they have. Designing a product to meet the requirements and perspective of others is the key. UX practitioners usually use 3 different methods in user experience research. Central to all methods, the researcher will need to figure out who they have to reach. First, the researcher will have to ask questions to the user about their thoughts. Researchers can conduct interviews and surveys. The interviews involve discussions that will reveal different experiences. And the surveys will involve questions that are shown to many different people and will reveal the same kind of information. This research will provide the researcher with insights into user experiences. Second, the researcher will have to watch the behavior of the users. Researchers can conduct observations, as these will reveal more than the interviews. Observations will involve watching users perform activities, such as watching people interact with prototypes. The researcher can set up user testing, where users can be observed performing scripted tasks on systems. We will delve into the testing process in this section. Third, the researcher can inspect prototypes and other deliverables. The researcher can compare the system to guidelines and principles in an attempt to find out what rules are violated and where the system is likely to fail. The researcher can also compare the system to other systems in an attempt to figure out the strengths and weaknesses of the design. These type of research methods will assist the designer to guide the product towards a good experience. Now, one of the main methods of UX research is user testing. During a test, the UX practitioner observes the user interact with a prototype product. The practitioner observes users attempt to perform certain assigned tasks, a real-world use scenario, and then collects data on the thoughts and actions of the user as they attempt to navigate towards task completion. This type of testing provides the practitioner with great qualitative and quantitative data into the design and also user feedback. Usability testing can be broken down into 2 main types. Either the test is performed on an existing system that needs to be improved, or it will be performed on a system in development that requires more input on the evolving design. By involving users in the process, the designer is reducing risk in the decision making, as the users act as a safety in double-checking the approach outlined towards solving the design problem identified. Most important, usability testing will lead to a report with a large number of design recommendations. Now, as part of the testing, the researcher observes a representative set of users attempt to perform tasks on the system they are evaluating. Through observation, the researcher is able to learn what works about the system and what does not work. The researcher can observe where the users have difficulties and make note of incident areas. There are a lot of insights that can arise from observations, and this can lead to the design of a good product. It is important to note that the UX practitioner needs to make certain types of observations throughout the test. Here are some examples. Was the product effective at detecting errors? Was the product effective at recovering from errors? Are conventions using the product easy to remember? How enjoyable was the task to accomplish? How difficult was the task for the user? And why was the user unsuccessful in any given step? As part of the process of observing users attempt to use a system, it is important to ensure that they are not led in the tasks assigned. The researcher must avoid providing the users with clues or tips or insight on how to go about performing particular tasks. The users must struggle to perform tasks and figure them out on their own. the researcher must not lead the users on how to perform the tasks. If there are certain terms in the interface that are part of the task instructions, the researcher must be careful not to use such leading terms, as these will tip off the user on where to go and how to approach the problem. Another interesting point to note about user testing is the think aloud protocol. Users should think aloud or talk about what's on their mind or what they are thinking about as they attempt to solve tasks. This provides the researcher with information as to the mental processes and the thoughts which users have as they attempt to navigate the tasks. Otherwise, without having a running stream of consciousness as to the thought process, the observer cannot know exactly what the user is looking at, what they are looking for, what they are thinking, what is the source of confusion, how they are feeling, how they are understanding the presentation, and so forth. Now I'm going to move on to talk about specifics about the test session. Here's a sample to-do list of things to go over before, during, and after the test. Before the test session, you want to check that prototype is ready to be accessed, check audio and/or screen recording equipment, prepare the script, and clear any history from the previous session. During the test session, you want to welcome the user, request the user to sign a non-disclosure agreement and sign that they are okay with being filmed, provide an incentive, start recording devices, summarize the purpose, process, and plan of the session, tell the user that they are not being tested, but that the design is, encourage honesty and state that it is okay to express criticism and negative thoughts, encourage users to express their thoughts verbally as they interact with the prototype, explain that the recordings are strictly for the purpose of product improvement, ask the users whether or not they have any questions, state that there are no right or wrong answers, state that the user does not have to answer something they don't want to answer, state that the user is free to leave at any point they wish, and most importantly, follow the plan and script. And lastly, after the test session, you want to stop recording devices and save the recordings, save the notes, and review the information gathered. Capturing and analyzing and evaluating a user's thought is central to the user testing process. After the user completes the task assigned, the researcher should debrief the user. The researcher will have hunches on certain observations throughout the assignment, which can then be clarified during the debrief. Further, any areas where the user may have had difficulty or may not have completed correctly are important areas to go over and review. It is better to have a discussion about such difficulties after the task rather than to interrupt the assignment in the middle. It is not a good idea to interrupt the user in the middle of an assignment. The researcher can probe for more information and resolve questions during the debrief. In addition, the debrief is also a chance to ask specific prepared questions about the product. Examples include: what is your opinion of the product? Is there anything you think could be made better? What is your favorite aspect of the product? Would you use this product? The next phase of the process involves a review and an assessment of the notes you have made during the test session. During the test, you'll have made notes on data such as whether the participant was successful at the different points within the assigned tasks and what errors were made. There is a lot of data to go through, so patterns need to be identified which can summarize the significance of the data. The notes made during the test session and the recordings made will help in the review process. Human memory does not capture the sufficient level of detail of events, and that is why we need to take notes and make recordings. Finally, after in-depth analysis and review of the usability tests, the researcher will need to write the usability test report. The report will include both the problems that the user has encountered, as well as the ideas the researcher presents on how to solve those problems. Specifically, the report should include a description of the test, a description of the users, findings and recommendations for redesign.